Radio Network host, Otter PR, Greg Linnelli, two N's, two L's. What's going on, buddy? How are you?
What's going on?
How was Lightning Power Lunch today?
It was good. We, as you can imagine, recapping Four Nations tournament and a lot of people talking about the impact it may have midterm, long term for hockey. I think that's an interesting takeaway from kind of a manufactured tournament. You know, the league kind of put it together.
I'm glad you said that because you and I have had this conversation. I mentioned before on the show. You were probably, out of all the people I know, one of the more less optimistic, or just like kind of a why are we doing this right now? I don't want to say if has your opinion changed about it, but did it make a more profound impact than you initially thought?
I don't think so.
No.
You know, I think it was going to be intense. I think you appreciated the hockey and the intensity. I think you and I had these conversations off the air. How can you have best on best when a lot of the best players weren't participating in this tournament from certain countries, and most notably Russia? So I think it was a good way for hockey to be in the spotlight by itself with all the other major sports either not playing or having a break.
That worked out well, huh? The timing.
It did. And, you know, I think there's something to be said for rooting for your country regardless of when that happens.
Right.
The question I always have is, was this just a sporting event that people tuned into? Or can you generate buzz? And I use the analogy, Jay. It's kind of like when a company does Facebook ads and you want to get the name out there. But the biggest thing, the reason why you do something like that is to get the conversion.
Right.
Somebody to click through and purchase the product. Are you going to have the average fan check in and say, I'm sold. This is what I want to watch? The league did their part and gave you a platform to see how hockey is played best on best. But what does it mean for the sport moving forward? I just think it was a sporting event to watch. Nothing more, nothing less. But there may be some people who disagree and think it's bigger than that.
Yeah, and I think that's the hope, right? The hope is that you do get some
it's
people. I made the analogy of Tiger King. I mean, look at Tiger King when it came out on Netflix, Joe Exotic and all these things. Was it really that invigorating of a documentary? Yeah. No, it was the only thing that came out at the beginning of the pandemic.
Sure.
Everything else shut down, and that was the number one, and that was the thing that everybody watched because there was nothing else on. So the timing was impeccable. Right, but then when they did like the follow up and they did other things, people didn't really care. People didn't even know. But that's the point because there was other things to consume. So I'm with you. I'm very interested to see. I think the timing of this was huge.
Do you think it will though? I think that's my I don't think it will.
I'm hopeful. I'm probably more hopeful than certain. Hopeful than than certain, because the one thing that about sports, which is great, and I think a sport is doing well, is when you get the diehards with the casuals. How do you bring in the casuals? How do you get them to even? It's not always about conversion. I know you just said conversion, but I think it's not always about the conversion, or it's not all about the conversion, because what you do want is, I compared it to boxing or MMA, where you may not have been a boxing fan, but in the late 80s or the early 90s, if Mike Tyson was fighting, if somebody says, hey, you want to go watch the Tyson fight? You're like, yeah, sure. Why not? Right. Same thing with MMA. Like, oh, wow, Ronda Rousey's fighting. I'm not a big MMA person. I don't like it. But if she's fighting, I'll go to a party and watch it. I'll go to a restaurant and watch
Usain Bolt.
Right. Yeah. Usain Bolt. Like there's certain Michael Phelps, right?
But those are individuals.
Right.
I think there's difference with a team when it's the country than it is one. I mean, even basketball, it's a team element. But it's a little bit more individual because you could say, I like Michael Jordan.
Right.
I'm going to follow that guy. Hockey,
well, you're also going to see him, and at a 48 minutes, you'll see him, 90%.
48 minutes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty even 100% of the time.
Right.
For hockey, where sometimes it's tougher to follow those guys along.
It's tough.
I think it's a start. But the one thing that they need to make sure that they do is continue to build the individual stars, because that's what brings people in. Right. The Kachucks being a name, and it's a unique name, is going to get people. Like if the Panthers are on the road playing a team and you're in America, people are saying, oh, go see the Kachucks. Like every single team should be doing that. Come see the Utah Hockey Club face Matthew Tkachuk and the Florida Panthers, right? Because that's, to me, the one name that you look at that has made an impression on people in the States.
So let me ask you this, because I think this may answer your question, and I don't disagree with you on that. We're coming to the end of one of the greatest rivalries of all time, potentially, Ovechkin and Crosby.
Right.
Do you think the league did enough to promote generational all-time greats?
Not at all.
And
but
so if they can't do it then, who are like, okay, Connor
but it was different
McDavid.
though. It's different though, Greg, because the problem is they didn't have the TV deal to coincide with that. So if they would have had ESPN in the beginning of that deal to go,
you think that would have made a difference?
I think it would have helped.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would have helped enough, but it definitely would have helped, because when you're on the worldwide leader, right? And Crosby and Ovechkin are coming around at the same time.
Sure.
You also need media members too. So like another thing that I think really helped was what PK Subban did this week. PK Subban went on morning television that is consistently all NFL, all NBA, all Lakers, all Cowboys, all the time. And he went on twice and took NBA and the product to the woodshed, while former NBA players and people that cover the game just sat there in stunned silence, because they knew why. He was telling the truth. He knew that what he was saying, they knew what he was saying.
What did he
about,
say? I didn't even
well,
see
he was
it.
talking about hockey,
how bad the
NBA
is?
Well, he's just talking about hockey players don't do load management. Hockey players, they leave it all out there. They max out. And everybody wants to talk about, oh, this guy and that guy, and oh, he's so great. He said, I don't want to hear these basketball players as all-time greats when they're not going all out. They're not maxing out. I saw a stat today. In the three-peat for Jordan, when they won in 96, 97, and 98, Greg, he played in all 310 regular season games and every single playoff game.
Incredible.
Right? And this is a guy that was in his mid-30s at the time. He was the greatest player alive. If he would have took a game off, nobody would have said anything. Well, maybe they would have. But now with load management and guys bitching and moaning and complaining about how much money they're making, when you have guys that are sitting at the end of the bench making $8 million. And if you did that in the NHL, you'd be a top 30 player probably, right? So there was just a lot that went into it. And when you get a chance, man, look it up, because it's really eye-opening what he said about the product. And I think those are the thing that makes waves. Because I think media partners have it as well. Like having former players talk about the product inside the NBA.
Yeah.
On TNT with Shaq, Kenny, and Charles Barkley and the great Ernie Johnson.
Sure. It's
one of the best things about the sport. It really is. I know people that tune in to Inside the NBA.
Do you think it's better than the sport? The actual analysis, that show, people know it more than who are the top 8 teams in the Eastern Conference for your casual observer.
I mean, at this time, it's the fact that you can't answer that question right away is a problem for the NBA.
I also think in the NHL, you probably need the right people promoting the game.
Yeah,
and talking about it in a way like. So the Spit and Chicklets podcast, right? I mean, that gets a lot of notoriety. Mm-hmm. Is that the best vehicle to be promoting the game? In your opinion,
I've never thought so.
I don't think so either.
I don't think Paul Bissonnette is the. Listen, he's a guy he's very brash. I love what he did for those bullies in Arizona that were messing with the restaurant people. Yeah. Like, I tip my hat to that. I thought that was one of the coolest things you're going to see.
Yeah.
But like, you can tell it bothers some of the guys on the Lightning over the years.
Sure.
Like, just the things like crapping on American hockey. Like, what is he doing to grow the game?
That's what I mean.
If you're feeding that Barstool audience, then that's fine. But is the Barstool audience the audience that's going to help grow the game? Because they've had the opportunity the last couple of years. He's the mainstay on TNT. But I don't want to hear a guy like that tell me about scoring in front of the net when you have Wayne Gretzky on the panel, right? I don't want to hear about that guy talk about postseason runs when you have Henrik Lundqvist on the panel. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it kind of falls on deaf ears when you have an ESPN crew of Steve Levy, who's been your hockey guy from back in the 90s, right? You have Mark Messier, one of the greatest players of all time, and PK Subban, who is a guy that is like, he's loved around the league, a Canadian guy. He's got flash and dash. Sure. He was a fantastic player in his day. He's not afraid to say, even those two guys go at it. But I like the ESPN crew because I think it gives them credibility and they also have fun. But it's like, it's on the way. It's on the precipice of doing that. But they also they need that big personality. But big personality with cachet. It's great that, Biz has a great personality. Don't get me wrong. But Shaq
nobody knows who he is, but
nobody knows who he was. Like,
nobody knows.
You follow Shaq. Like, you followed Shaq. He went to LSU, first overall pick, Magic, Lakers. Heat, Sun, Celtics. Like everybody knows where he played, and he's amazing. He's everywhere. Same thing with Charles Barkley, Hall of Famer, round mound of rebound, dream team, right? Kenny Smith,
Yeah.
New York City legend, went to North Carolina, 2-time champion with the Rockets in the 90s. Like there's credibility there. So that's what they had ingrained. And then Ernie Johnson with a Hall of Fame broadcaster. So who is that analogy, right? Who are those guys for the NHL? You know, because even as much as I love Messier, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't him. He doesn't have like the most gregarious, like outgoing,
he's not charismatic,
crazy personality. But the things that he says would go a long way in a different environment, I think, because he could be the serious voice, right? He could be that guy going, well, I won 6 cups, right? I think it'd be a little bit different there, but you need these larger than life personalities. I just don't know. Think of anybody.
I don't know if they're there. That's the thing.
But that goes back to your question, though. Your original question.
Yeah.
Is Ovechkin and Crosby, either one of those guys, larger than life personalities?
I think
we didn't see that though until he won the cup, right? When he won the cup, then he's naked in the fountain and everything like that. But even outside of that, I don't know if he's the most, because Crosby certainly isn't, right? Crosby's not that guy, and he was the ultimate winner. So the one thing that for many years before Washington won the cup is Crosby had the team success, right? Winning those cups with Malkin and Letang and all of those guys, but he was never a guy that was a great quote. He was never a guy that you were like, put the microphone in his hands, walk away for 10 minutes, you're going to get gold. And unfortunately, Connor McDavid's not like that. Austin Matthews isn't like that. I don't think
most hockey players are, though. And I think that's the difference. And here's
different guys.
2 guys that come to mind. If we can rewind and get Phil Esposito when he was 40 or 50, could you imagine him on a panel?
Right.
Speaking his mind? I think he would have the cachet and he would have the personality. Don Cherry.
Yeah.
I mean, those are guys who had opinions that at least you might have tuned in to a broadcast with Don Cherry. What did he have to say? You don't have enough of that today. I think some of that, a lot of it, is just the nature of how hockey players go about their business. It's not a lot of, I don't want to say me, but if you want to go that route.
No, you're right. It's a very deferential.
Say that.
Hockey players are very deferential.
Yes.
You'll ask them about themselves and Vondrei Vasilevsky and Nikita Kucherov are those 2 guys, right?
Yeah.
They don't like talking about themselves, and Kuch doesn't like talking at all.
They don't like, period.
But Vazzy is much more, he's really come out and done a lot more. But we saw it with Stammer, we saw it with Hetty. Like they're the same way. Like it's about the team, and I think that's what endears a lot of people to hockey players. But does that come at the cost of entertainment? I think it does.
Hockey's a tough sport to get behind because of to your point, your best players are playing 15 minutes, 18 minutes a night. I think it's such a team game. It's hard to follow for a lot of people. That's why I think the Olympics and the playoff hockey is so endearing to many people because of the intensity that comes with it. To ask somebody to, maybe buy in who's an average fan for an 82 game season, that may be a tough ask. I think what you're hoping for, Jay, in something like this is that somebody who is in Carolina or somebody who is your average fan somewhere that has a team is that maybe they take this experience that they watched and said, you know what, I'm going to go follow my local team now because that was pretty cool. And maybe go to a few games because that's really where I think you can embrace hockey at its best.
Yeah, just get a couple more here, a couple more there, a couple people buying.
Keep growing it.
Yeah, just keep growing it little by little, plant those seeds. Before we talk some Lightning hockey, I want to ask you about Mike Lange, who passed away. I know you being a Pens guy. This guy, when you saw him up in the press box, everybody was they spoke to him with such reverence. They waited to speak to him. And unfortunately, he was lost. But, man, what an impact that he had on the game.
It's cliche, and you're hearing about it over the last couple of days of not only what a great broadcaster he was, but what a great guy he was, that he took time to talk to a lot of broadcasters and pull them aside and give them encouragement or give them some structured criticism on ways they can make themselves better. And everybody had a great Mike Lange story. So I think it speaks to how good of a person he was. And then what I said on the show the other day with Mish, from a play-by-play perspective, if you're listening to guys like that, you got to keep in mind that Mike Lange was the superstar before Mario Lemieux came on board. A lot of people would tune into games just to hear Mike Lange call a game. That's how big he was. And in Pittsburgh, you had, the Bob Princes who did baseball, Bill Hillgrove who's still doing football right now, Mike Lange. You had a lot of icons, Myron Cope, who you identified the team with them. But I think where the team was before Mario, it was Mike Lange, which is unusual as a broadcaster for a franchise. But the way he called a game and how he was able to let you feel like you knew exactly what was happening. The Lightning are pushing. He could depict that. The Penguin, Mary Lemieux on a breakaway. You felt the turn and the tide of a game changing sometimes because of the way he called. I think every great broadcaster, that's their quality. They're
Theater
able to
of the
kind of let
mind.
you know. Yeah, can kind of let you know
mind.
what's happening, and he did that at a very high level. So, what more can you say? I mean, just it's a legend, and they don't come around all that often. Hall of Famer, and just a great guy all the way around.
Yeah, Foster Hewitt Award winner, same award that the great Dave Mishkin won. So I mean, you're amongst great company for sure. Lightning getting back in action. It's going to be so crazy. I think the NHL did a big disservice to teams like Detroit and Minnesota that play tomorrow at 12:30. Right? Figure Matthew Boldy and Dylan Larkin playing on the same line last night there in Boston in overtime, and now they got to go play each other at 12:30. It's just wild to me. But where is your eyes, where is your focus going to be on specifically when it comes to the Lightning being back in action on Sunday at 6 p.m.?
I think first and foremost, the guys who did play, do the Lightning get a boost, or does it drain those guys a little bit coming out of the gate playing a tournament like that emotionally? You could make a case it allowed them to stay sharp, and because of that, maybe the Lightning can build off of the tournament that all the Lightning players had. By all indications, a very good tournament.
Right.
Or is it something that they're off emotional low because they've just competed in such a high intense environment? I think that's first and foremost. I want to see them how they react coming out of the gate. The guys who didn't play, how is Vasti? How is Kucherov looking? Those are two really big pieces to the Lightning and what they want to accomplish. They're rested. That could speak very well to the Lightning moving forward. Mish pointed out today on the show, and it's a good one. The heavy lifting in terms of travel is done for the Lightning. They have, I think, one more decent trip, and after that, it's pretty normal scheduling. So are the Lightning able to take advantage of that? And then I think what I'm going to be watching the most will be the trade deadline. Is Julien Brisebois going to work his magic and do something to help this team continue their push? Because I think they're playing some pretty good hockey here of late. We'll see what the break allows and if they're able to get back into the swing of things. But what moves can Julien make to give this team really everything they need to represent the East in the Stanley Cup Final, knowing that the East, I think, is pretty wide open?
It is. What do you think about J.J. Moser coming back? Do you think he gets right back in there next to Hedman, or do you? Because Radish has done. I feel like Radish has raised his level.
I like Radish.
Yeah,
I
and
think
who's
Moser
the odd
goes
man
back.
out? You think Moser goes back?
I think Moser goes back with Hedman. I mean, I think. Look, could you make a case that you could put Moser on your third pair, and really make your decor deep, having a Hedman and a McDonough and a Moser, kind of like they had with the Hedman, the McDonough, and the Sergachev, when things are rolling. I think Moser probably goes back with Hedman. I mean, you're going to have McDonough and Chernak. I think it's hard to keep Lilleberg out of the lineup. I think you want that young guy in there, right, playing as much as he can. And I don't know if they go 7. Maybe. Is this year they stay 7 and avoid those tough decisions on the back end, Jay? I don't know. But I will tell you this. I've said it on my show. I think if they want to get a decent piece of the trade deadline, one of those defensemen may have to go. May have to go.
No, I think that's without a doubt. Because I think you look at Max Crozier. I mean, he's an NHL defenseman.
He is.
I really do. And the fact that he's on this team, there's a lot of other teams that he would be on, and he would be in their top 4 probably. He'd be right in the mix there. So, yeah, I think you do have to move a piece there. I think you do. You find a way to bring a guy in, and do you trade 2 guys to bring in another defenseman? Do you trade 1 guy to bring in a middle 6 forward? But I feel like this team is close, but they got to make the right moves like Julien did when he brought in Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow. because if he does that and he brings in 2 guys for that third line, and then like let's say you bring Geeky back up, and one of the let's say Geeky settles in with Sorelli and Hagel, and then those 2 guys seem to mesh with like let's say a Gonsalves, and then your fourth line is we know Gergensons and Glendening, and then somebody whether it's a Chafee or Asimon or something like that on the fourth line, give you some energy. I don't think there's any issue with that, but you got to get that one guy, I think, in that middle six at the very least that's going to come in and be able to make a difference.
I think a lot of people maybe are starting to feel that way. I think it's Gonsalves, to his credit, I think they were hoping he would have performed like this earlier when he got called up.
Right.
And it may have alleviated the potential need to address what we just discussed.
Mm-hmm.
I think what he has done is he's put himself in the conversation to be in the lineup, even if they go out and get somebody. But I think they go out and get somebody.
Yeah, no, I don't think that's.
I think that's part of it. I think you have to if you're
I think
serious
you have
about
to.
competing.
I think you have to too. I think you got some cap room. There's no reason why he's doing all this stuff for cap room for no reason, right? Sending these guys down, not having them up. I want to get your opinion on Isaac Howard because that's another thing. I think they have to address it in 2 ways. I think they have to bring Isaac Howard up when he's done because you don't want to wait until next year and then have him go to anywhere he wants to go. He's that good, and he's that good. You're talking about an elite college player.
Yeah.
Bring him in. You're not expecting him to come in on the first line and play with Point and Kucherov, but if that's a guy that can score you 5 goals down the stretch.
So you would put him in, on the big club?
Yeah, right away. Right away. There's no reason to wait. I mean, there's guys in the past. I mean, it's one thing if he's a good player. Greg, he's arguably the best player in college hockey, right? I mean, you look at his skill. I mean, this guy is just incredible. And you're not going to ask him to play 18 minutes a night. You come in on the third line role, learn with these guys, right? He's that good. Play 10 to 13 minutes a night. Bring him up there. Play on that third line role. I think you get him in a think about this. I look at a guy like a Josh Anderson, right? From the Canadians. Big body, he can score, but he's a middle six guy, right? Imagine him playing with a Hagel and Sorelli, where he can kind of stay back a little bit, let those guys do the forecheck, and just shoot the puck. He's got a cannon. Maybe he's good enough to put on the first power play unit on that one side if you don't like Radish there. Then Geeky comes back, and you have Geeky, Paul, and Isaac Howard. Yeah. Now you're looking at a third line where, all right, Geeky's going to come up motivated. Paul's a great two-way player, and now you have Isaac Howard, who could be more offensively gifted than both of them, and he doesn't have to necessarily do all the heavy lifting.
Sure.
So I just think that makes a lot of sense for me. And going and waiting that one more year until next year and then giving him an opportunity to go play somewhere else, I think would be a huge misstep for Julien Brisebois. I think he wants him up here because I think you got to strike while the iron's hot. How many more cracks are you going to get at it with all of these guys in their prime? And I also look at McDonough, as great as he is, right? He's not getting any younger. He's the oldest of the group pretty much when it comes to the core guys. This is the year right here. And you said it before, the East is open, right? This is your chance because if you can get hot, you got the goalie, you still got a top 5, top 10 defenseman. And you have arguably 2 of the top 10 forwards and one of the more clutch guys in Jake Gensel. Like, this is the year. Nobody seems to be really raising up. I think on either conference, really raising up and going like planting their flag on the ground. Hey, we're the best team. Like we've seen from the Lightning, like we've seen from the Bruins, like we've seen from other teams, like even Toronto and Florida. Like at times you look at their regular season, it's like, oh my God, these guys are amazing. Nobody's really doing that this year.
Right.
So you have the pedigree, you have the experience, like make this move in here, get this guy in, because one thing that this team hasn't had, Greg, is young players pushing the guys above them. We haven't seen that since Braden Point has come up or Mikhail Sergachev. And I think Isaac Howard can do that. And let's say that's just, I think, low end. I don't think that there's a way Isaac Howard can come up to the big club and crap the bed. I just don't see it. Like, I don't see how he can play that bad. And then what is the ceiling? What if something happens where maybe he's the second line forward that plays with Hagel and Sorelli? Like, you're almost right. Maybe you throw him up there with Point and Kucherov, and then you put Gensel on that line. Now you're looking at a top 6 that who do you put your top D pair against? So I think Isaac Howard is that guy. You can look out and look at all the rentals, but that's the guy that's already in-house, top end talent. That's not going to cost you anything. And you can still go out there and get a middle 6 forward to help you out.
So would you have him maybe start in Syracuse just to kind of get his feet wet to a pro game to a degree?
I would maybe, but I would bring him up sooner rather than later. As soon as that season's over, get on the horn, get him up. We saw it with Chris Kreider. We saw it with Cale Makar, right? Chris Kreider was a good player, but I don't think he was as good in college as we're seeing from Isaac Howard. And you saw how good he was for the Rangers in that first year. We saw how good Cale Makar was. Like, we've seen this in hockey before. There is precedent. And again, it's one thing if you're bringing him up to be a top 6 guy. There is holes where he is in a position, he would fit in a position that they need. Sure. And you can't tell me that he is a worse option than Eyssimont, than Mitchell Chaffee, than even Gonsalves. And Gonsalves is playing better, but he's playing better with better talent. But he's not playing. He has the ability to play with top 6 forwards, but I don't know if he has the potential to be a top 6 forward. Does that make sense? Because I don't see Gonsalves going down to the third line and scoring 15, 20 goals, right? Because then he disappears, right? He can get the puck to Kucherov, but he doesn't have that, all right, I'm going to score, 20 goals, or I'm going to be a guy in the mix. So I just think it makes too much sense. Why? Like, you're going to let him marinate in college? There's no reason why this kid needs to go back to college. I don't know what 2 weeks in Syracuse is going to do him. Get him up here, get him in a room with some of these guys and learn how to work and get ready to roll.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I mean, if I've always felt talent usually rises to the top, and if you've got a really talented player and you want to bring him up, then let's see what he can do. I think the one thing we've all discussed, which is why you're probably bringing this conversation up, is to better your team depth-wise in the bottom 6.
Right.
Maybe he doesn't start there. Maybe he does, and then moves his way into a top 6 role.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with that. Yeah. I mean, look, if he's as talented as the numbers are suggesting, and everything you've just said, and the way the Lightning feel about him, Julien Brisebois is not shy to buck kind of, the conventional wisdom there. I think he will look at things and say what's best for the Lightning, and if that's the route they go, I'm okay with that.
I mean, think about the excitement too, Greg, right? Think about the excitement of having him in. I'm looking at it right now. Right now, as a junior at Michigan State, he's got the second most points in college hockey. He's got 43 points. He's only behind Aiden Fink from Penn State. So Isaac Howard in 30 games, 22 goals, 21 assists. I mean, and he shoots the puck, Greg, 136 shots. So this is a guy, and he's still a plus 17. So he's out there playing good hockey as well. He's not just out there like, I'm going to score and I don't care about my defensive end.
Yeah.
There's so many good players right now at the collegiate level. I mean, a lot of these guys are already accounted for when you look at like Z Buyam and, Gabe Perreault and Ryan Leonard, like those guys, were in Minnesota, they're with the Rangers, we're with Washington already. But you look at Isaac Howard when you're that high as a junior, right? Strike while the iron's hot. And I like when teams take chances, right? And we've seen that with Julien in the past, trading in these draft picks and doing all this stuff to, go get a Brandon Hagel, right? To go get a Blake Coleman. You can make a risk here. I'm not a believer, and I don't know if you are. I'm not a believer of like, you bring up a guy too soon, you're gonna crush his confidence and stuff like that. Like, I think if a guy doesn't play well and he doesn't have the confidence and that ruins his career, like, was he really going to be that good anyway? Right?
It's fair. I think the thing you worry about with younger players who are skilled is burying them in a third or fourth line role and not developing that way. I have seen that over the years, and I think you have to have a balance there. I think you want to put them in the right position to be successful, especially early on, to give them some confidence. And I think you also want to have them come up and earn their way. So I think there is a little bit of a balance. But I think if you're going to do something with Howard, and he's a skilled player, which he is, I don't know if playing him on a fourth line makes a lot of sense either.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't put him there.
So from there, you got to figure it out.
Greg, what do you got going on the rest of the weekend, man? Lightning Radio Network.
Yeah, man. Well, we got a game, right? Sunday.
Yeah, buddy.
6 o'clock means we'll be on the airwaves at 5:30 tomorrow. Just a lot of stuff around the house, running the girls around, and hoping Enzo gets some sleep.
There you go. Did you text Phil for his birthday yesterday?
I didn't. I didn't even know.
Oh, he texted me back. I was telling people on the show yesterday, this is Phil's response. TYCU, Sunday or Tuesday, emoji with black sunglasses.
Really? I'm going to text him right now and say happy belated.
TYCU. They can't even say thank you, you lazy son of a gun. Greg Linnelli, Lightning Radio Network. He's texting Phil now. That's 2 N's, 2 L. Check him out on social media. Appreciate your time, my friend. I'll see you on Sunday. Thanks.
We'll talk soon.
All right, buddy.
Thank you.